talk us through the worst case scenario here?
How bad?
Who's pretty much way?
I don't think you understand what they'll do to her when they get her out of this country.
Caitlyn just made a decision that could get Joe killed, and honestly, I don't think she even feels bad about it. If you've been watching Lioness this season, you already know Caitlyn isn't exactly the warm, nurturing type. But what we're about to see in episode 5 might be the moment she finally crosses a line that even her harshest critics didn't expect. Because here's the thing, Joe is sitting somewhere in Russia right now, being tortured for information, and the woman who's supposed to be running this entire rescue operation might just let her rot there a little longer. Why? Because it's useful. Let's be real for a second. Caitlyn has never once treated Joe like a person. To her, Joe is an asset. A tool. Something you use until it breaks, and then you replace it with the next available agent. And if the promo for episode 5 is telling us anything, it's that Caitlyn is about to lean into that mindset harder than ever. We already saw her tell Neil to prepare for the worst, that Joe might not make it back. But is that really concern talking? Or is that Caitlyn quietly preparing everyone around her to accept a loss she's already planned for? Here's my theory, and I think it's going to make a lot of you angry. I don't think Caitlyn wants Joe dead. But I don't think she's in a rush to save her either. Why? Because every single day that Joe stays in Russian hands, without giving up a shred of information, is a day that proves something valuable to Caitlyn, that Russia is desperate, exposed, and willing to show their hand just to break one woman. And the longer that goes on, the more intel Caitlyn's team can quietly gather about Russian operations on American soil. Cold. Absolutely. Smart? Unfortunately, yes. Caitlyn doesn't operate on loyalty. She operates on leverage. And right now, Joe is the biggest piece of leverage in the entire game. But here's what really gets me. While Caitlyn is playing this long, calculated waiting game, Joe's own team is out there tearing through covert networks trying to bring her home. The synopsis for episode 5 practically confirms it. Joe's team exposing a hidden network of handlers while Caitlyn and Westfield scramble to assess the threat. Assess the threat. Or assess how much longer they can afford to wait before public pressure forces their hand. Because let's not forget, somewhere out there, Neil is sitting at home with his kids, having already been told by Caitlyn herself to prepare for the possibility that his wife isn't coming back. Imagine hearing that from the one person who's supposed to be fighting to bring her home. And then there's Kyle. Oh, Kyle. If you thought his methods were brutal in episode 4, buckle up, because episode 5 looks like it's about to push him even further off the rails. The promo shows him breaking car windows, dragging people into interrogations, and from what we can tell, beating information out of a university professor with zero hesitation. Joe herself seems to justify it with one chilling line, "That's who we are." But is it really who Joe is? Or is it who Caitlyn has slowly, quietly molded her entire team into becoming? Because if Caitlyn is willing to sacrifice Joe for intelligence, what exactly is stopping her from sacrificing anyone else on that team the moment they stop being useful to her? That question alone should terrify everyone still trusting Caitlyn's leadership, because if episode 5 proves anything, it's that no one on this team is actually safe, not even the people fighting hardest to save Joe. Let's talk about Alexandra's list for a second, because this is where things get really messy. Caitlyn reveals she's learned about Russia's assets operating inside America, and let's be honest, we all know exactly where that list came from. Alexandra. The same Alexandra who already confirmed the Lioness team's information had been compromised. So now Caitlyn has a list of names, and instead of handling this carefully, quietly, the way real intelligence work is supposed to happen, what do we get? Kyle and Joe's team hunting these people down one by one, using exactly the kind of brute force interrogation tactics that got Kyle in trouble in the first place. Does that sound like careful strategy to you? Or does that sound like a team that's completely lost control and is just improvising as they go? And here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. Caitlyn apparently allows all of this. She doesn't stop Kyle. She doesn't rein him in. She lets him operate exactly the way he wants, as long as it gets results. So really, when you strip away all the excuses, Kyle and Caitlyn aren't that different, are they? Two people who have convinced themselves that the ends always justify the means, no matter how many lines they cross to get there. The professor scene alone should make that painfully clear, an innocent academic getting beaten, because he might know something. Joe watches this happen and simply says, "That's who we are." 4 words that tell you everything about how far this team has fallen from whatever moral code they started with. Meanwhile, back in Russia, Joe is still paying the price for everyone else's decisions. If the pattern from episode 4 continues, we're likely going to see her tortured even further, pushed to her absolute breaking point, all while her own boss debates how much longer she's willing to let this go on before deciding Joe simply isn't worth the risk anymore. Because remember, Caitlyn doesn't need Joe to survive. She just needs her to stay silent. The moment Caitlyn becomes convinced that Joe isn't going to talk no matter what, that's the exact moment Joe becomes disposable in her eyes. So here's the real question nobody's asking. If Caitlyn is willing to let the operation drag on longer, purely to squeeze more intelligence out of Russia's desperation, is she actually trying to save Joe at all? Or has Joe already become nothing more than bait, dangling in enemy territory, while everyone back home benefits from her suffering? And what happens to Neil and those kids if Caitlyn's gamble doesn't pay off? What happens to a family that's already been told to prepare for the worst, only to find out the worst was allowed to happen on purpose? One thing is becoming painfully clear as we head into episode 5, in this war, loyalty means nothing. Usefulness is the only currency that matters. And right now, Joe's clock might be running out faster than anyone on that team is willing to admit. So tell me, do you think Caitlyn is secretly protecting Joe, or is she quietly preparing to let her go? Drop your theory in the comments, because episode 5 is about to answer a question none of us are ready for.